Well, a disturbing development on the border crisis. Wait until you hear this. The Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement confirms that more than 13,000 illegal immigrants convicted of murder have been caught at the border and then released into the United States. The letter here tells the tale. Hello, I'm John Roberts in Washington. You believe this, Sandra?
Which means they are here. And this is just an unbelievable development. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. Good to be with you, John. This is America Reports. Let's get right to Bill Melugin. He's got this news for us. He's live out of Douglas, Arizona right now, where Vice President Kamala Harris is set to visit later this afternoon. Bill, the details of this news, what do you have?
Yeah, and Sandra, bear with me. We just got these numbers moments ago, but it's a jaw dropper to say the least. So to set the stage here, let me just explain what these numbers mean. ICE has something called a non-detained docket. Essentially what that is it means migrants who were encountered by DHS but are no longer in federal custody. So who's on this non-detained docket? It's illegal immigrants who were caught and released at the border, released with the court date years away. They're in immigration proceedings, combined with illegal immigrants who have already been ordered deported from the country by a judge but are still here roaming the country. So keep that in mind, this non-detained docket. According to a letter that the acting director of ICE just sent to Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez, on ICE's non-detained docket, they're currently tracking 425,000 non-citizens who have been convicted of a crime. Of that number, over 13,000 non-citizens have convictions for homicide and are on the non-detained docket, meaning they're roaming the country right now. On top of that, there are another 15,811 non-citizens convicted of sexual assault who are roaming the country right now on ICE's non-detained docket. It doesn't stop there. Those are convictions. The ICE director also says there are currently just under 1,900 non-citizens on the non-detained docket who have pending homicide charges who are roaming the country, and another 4,250 non-citizens who have pending sexual assault charges who are roaming the country on the non-detained docket. So people's eyes might be glazing over right now with all the numbers we just threw at you. Just to put it in a nutshell right here, what we've learned from the acting ICE director via this letter to Congressman Tony Gonzalez is right now there are over 13,000 illegal aliens convicted of homicide who are roaming the United States right now. There are another 15,811 illegal aliens roaming the country right now who have been convicted of sexual assault, and there are even more who are facing charges for homicide and charges for sexual assault. So this just goes to show, guys, the non-detained docket has exploded under the Biden administration to over, I believe it's 7.3 million. They're anticipating it could hit 8 million by the end of the year. But looking at the numbers on this letter right here, there are currently over 600,000 non-citizens on ICE's non-detained docket who are either convicted, 600,000 non-citizens on this non-detained docket who are roaming the country right now. Of that, 425,000 have already been convicted of crimes. 222,000 are pending crimes. And again, the most serious crimes we just told you about, over 13,000 convicted of homicide, over 15,000 convicted of sexual assault. And honestly, that is not a surprise to hear given these horrible headlines we keep seeing popping up in multiple parts of the country almost every day now of a horrible sexual assault or a murder or another violent felony committed by an illegal alien who is often caught and released from custody. And the jaw dropper here too, guys, is all these numbers we just rattled off, they don't even account for the nearly 2 million gotaways who have crossed our border under the Biden administration. Those almost 2 million gotaways, they were never encountered by DHS. They snuck in. They were never caught by Border Patrol. They were never encountered by ICE. There's no record of them, so they have nothing to do with the numbers I just rattled off to you. These are just the numbers of people that ICE has already encountered, that Border Patrol has encountered, that DHS knows who they are. And we just saw those horrible stories in Nantucket the other day. ICE ran a week-long operation in Nantucket, and in a single operation in a 48-hour span, they arrested 2 Salvadoran illegal aliens who came into the country as gotaways and were arrested for child rape on Nantucket. They got a Brazilian guy who was arrested for sexually assaulting a Nantucket resident, and then a Guatemalan guy who was previously deported who was arrested for sexually assaulting a Nantucket resident. So we keep seeing all these headlines about migrant crime popping up in different cities all over the country. This right here is the first time we have ever seen specific numbers as to who and what ICE is tracking when it comes to convicted criminals who have crossed the border at some point and are either supposed to be deported or are going through their immigration proceedings, but are not in ICE custody right now and are roaming the country. So I'll ping it back to you guys, but some pretty jaw-dropping numbers that we are still going through as we speak right now.
So, Bill, this letter that was sent from the acting director of ICE to Congressman Tony Gonzalez of Texas, he responds to an inquiry that Gonzalez sent him back in March. I just talked to Gonzalez a moment ago, and he's going to be joining us at the top of our next hour. He's surprised that he ever heard back at all. But what's interesting is in this letter, the acting director says, quote, ICE recognizes that some jurisdictions are concerned that cooperating with federal immigration officials will erode trust with immigrant communities and make it harder for law enforcement to serve those populations. However, sanctuary policies can end up shielding dangerous criminals who often victimize those same communities. I mean, that would appear to be, from the acting director of ICE, a tacit acknowledgement here that sanctuary policies are endangering the public.
100%. And I talk to a lot of ICE contacts pretty much every single day, and that is their biggest frustration. Is all over the country there are these jurisdictions who simply will not cooperate with them, no matter how heinous the crime is. I mean, the Boston ICE office is arresting child rapists and these horrific sexual assaulters, and these local jurisdictions, ICE will put a detainer on them and basically say, hey, please hold them in custody. We'll send our guys and we'll pick them up. That way they don't get back into the community. The locals ignore ICE, ignore their detainers, and just release them back onto the streets, sometimes with a tiny bond, a few $1,000s for a child rape or an aggravated sexual assault. It makes ICE want to pull their hair out. And you did see that in the ICE director's letter. It is a head nod that, hey, we got to deal with a lot of sanctuary jurisdictions who will not cooperate with us for any reason. And when Kamala Harris visits the border today, if she takes any questions, I'm hoping she does. One of the things I'm hoping to ask her is, back in 2019, she campaigned for president as saying she wants to get rid of all ICE detainers, saying they tear families apart. You know, one of the biggest things we hear from ICE is there's this misconception about them that they're kicking in doors of grandmas and little kids and going after people who are just working and here for a better life. The people they're going after right now are the worst of the worst. We're talking serious felons, murderers, sexual assaulters, rapists, that sort of a thing. And when ICE detainers are not honored and these local jurisdictions just release people back out onto the streets without notifying the feds, it's dangerous for everybody involved. It's dangerous for the local community who might have a sex predator back on their streets. It's dangerous for ICE because instead of having someone just handed over to the jail to them in a secure environment, now ICE has to use their resources to develop intel and try to find this guy and find out where he's going to be, and then use 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of their officers to go apprehend this guy who could be violent. Maybe they'll fight back. Maybe they won't want to go back into federal custody. So it's dangerous for everybody involved. In these sanctuary jurisdictions, it's going to come to a point here soon. Donald Trump is vowing to end them. I had a phone call with him the other day. I said, well, how are you going to end them? What are you going to do? And he said, well, if it comes down to it, I'm going to strip federal funding away from sanctuary cities. I said, well, how far are you willing to go with that? Will you pull FEMA disaster money from them? He said, yes, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. We don't know where Kamala Harris stands on sanctuary cities right now. I'd love to ask her that today if she takes any questions. We'll find out later. But her running mate, Tim Walz, has advocated for pushing to have Minnesota become a sanctuary state in the past. So these are questions that Kamala Harris's campaign will have to answer about where she stands on sanctuary jurisdictions, detainers. She pledged to get rid of ICE detainers back in 2019. Where does she stand on that now? Has she flip-flopped on that like she has on some of her other border positions? Hopefully we get the chance to ask that, John.
All right, well, we're looking forward to that in the moments ahead. But just to recap the breaking news, more than 13,000 convicted criminals who crossed the border illegally have been, convicted murderers rather, who crossed the border illegally have been released into the United States. Almost 16,000 convicted of rape and sexual assault. Bill, great reporting. We look forward to what you have to tell us a little bit later on this afternoon.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.